Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing the coverage of the San Remo tournament of 1930 and after that modern wizardry by Magnus versus Max Farmerdam. We are returning with a heavy game, world champion Alexander Alekhine versus none other than the great Akiba Rubinstein. And of course, if you play chess, you've heard the name Rubinstein, whether in theory, whether in in chess history, or maybe just you're discussing chess and then you talk about who was the greatest player ever that never became world champion, and okay, some will say Bronstein, some will say Ivanchuk, some will say there are some names that can be definitely mentioned there, but without saying Akiba Rubinstein, that is a faulty conversation. And okay, here at the time this game was played, Alekhine was 38 years old, Rubinstein was already 50 years old, so Rubinstein, we could say that this is not Rubinstein in his prime. But if you've been following what's been happening in this tournament, and especially at the standings at the end of the tournament, you know that Rubinstein did incredibly well in the tournament, winning third place. So let's see how 50-year-old Rubinstein does against Alekhine here. But before we check out this game, I would just like to show you a game that was played 2 years prior to this event, where Rubinstein, also with the black pieces, faced future world champion Dr. Max Euwe, and this is the position from that game. So Max Euwe had the white pieces here, and he played queen to b3, and only the next few moves are important. Here h6 was played, and after bishop to f4, setting a deadly trap, knight to h5 was played by Rubinstein. And this idea that Rubinstein can miss such a tactic in such a position, I would say, inspired Alekhine to play his game against Rubinstein in 1930 in San Remo, because by going after the bishop, Rubinstein blundered knight captures on d5 from Dr. Max Euwe, and of course, if the knight is captured, bishop to c7 traps the queen. So this is very, very unfortunate. So Rubinstein instead had to settle for knight captures on f4, knight captures, and he had to play this position where he's down a pawn in a worse position. So maybe it's not, lost by default, but he will still have to try very hard. So this is something that we are going to discuss going into this game, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the previous matchups, previous games where Alekhine faced Rubinstein, as it is also very, very important. And I will mention this is the last game Alekhine and Rubinstein have ever played. But yeah, maybe he doesn't belong in this era, in terms of strength, even though he did incredibly well in the tournament. For example, in 1914, where he won 5 of the strongest tournaments in the world, he rivaled, the likes of Lasker and Capablanca, and although Lasker was the world champion in those days, he definitely had claims to challenge Lasker for the World Chess Championship title. He couldn't really find backers, or maybe he could, but then there was the outbreak of the World War I, and or the war, as they called it back then, and then, a lot of years passed, and he never got a chance to do it again. But okay, let's see what happened in this one. Alekhine has the white pieces, and he opens with d4. We have d5 by Akiba, and knight to f3. And also, I could talk many other things about Rubinstein, but I will save that for the mini Rubinstein saga that I also have in mind for, whenever I get the chance. But if you still haven't seen it, do check out Rotlevi versus Rubinstein. That is Rubinstein's immortal game. If you still haven't seen it, it was played in 1907, and it is one of the greatest games ever played. So if you have time, check it out. I will even put a link to it in the description below. So okay, knight f3, and now knight to f6. We have pawn to c4, pawn to e6, and bishop to g5. And also something that I thought about when analyzing this game, it's if white goes for knight to c3 instead of knight to f3, let's just go a few moves back. Well, it's a pretty funny story. But if you have a different move order, let's say you play pawn to c4, knight f6, and then knight to c3, and pawn to e6, bishop g5, and knight b to d7. Very, very often white will fall for this trap. It seems like you're blundering a pawn because the knight on f6 is pinned, but not really. If you go after this, black will just capture your knight and give up the queen, because what happens is that after you capture the queen, bishop to b4 check, and the white king has nowhere to go. You will have to block with your queen, and now black can just pick up the bishop. Black is up a piece, and you can pick up the queen whenever you want to, and black just wins on the spot. So, it's a little bit different, but don't make the mistake of doing that if knight to f3 is played instead of knight to c3, because in that line, when you play bishop to b4 with check, white will always have knight f to d2, so also something to consider, even if the knight is already developed or gone, or whatever. We have knight to f6, pawn to c4, pawn to e6, and now bishop to g5. We have knight b to d7, and now pawn to e3. We have bishop to e7, knight to c3, and castles kingside. So everything the same as it would be played in modern chess today. We have rook to c1, rook to e8, and now queen to c2. Nowadays, bishop to d3 first is a bit more popular, queen to c2, and now we have pawn to a6. C captures on d5 by Alekhine, E captures on d5 by Akiba, and bishop to d3, putting pressure on that h7 pawn. We have pawn to c6, and now castles kingside. And this is why I mentioned the game between Dr. Max Euwe before I decided to show you this game. This was played in 1928, and this is a game from the San Remo 1930, where it's very, very, well, we have to see the next move. For example, knight to e4 was played, and this position has never been reached again, or maybe once, but irrelevant for this game. But the point is, Alekhine can very easily calculate that he can win a pawn here, and he can do it by playing bishop captures on e4. Point being that if black tries bishop captures on g5, Alekhine has bishop captures on h7 first, and then he's going to recapture on g5. So what you would have to do is d captures on e4, knight captures, and after, let's say, bishop captures, knight captures, you're threatening queen captures, and after knight to f8, you just continue the game, like knight e4, and you're up a pawn. Maybe Alekhine didn't like something like bishop to f5, and it looks a little bit weird, but I mean, you can still easily defend, and you're just up a clean pawn. But that's why I've shown you that game. That we discussed, that where after pawn to h6, bishop to f4 was played, but here Alekhine just plays bishop to f4, and it's like he knows. Rubinstein will make a mistake on his next move, as he did against Max Euwe, and he does. But also something that we are going to discuss after the game, because it has also to do with all of the games they've played so far. And here Akiba played pawn to f5. And now I could ask you what Alekhine played in this position, but you already know, as we've already discussed the Max Euwe game. So Alekhine played knight captures on d5, where it's the exact same tactic. If c captures on d5, bishop c7 wins the black queen. It's like this is that one combination that Rubinstein can't seem to get a grasp of, even though he was such a master tactician, such a master endgame player, such a master middle game player. Also, unlike Alekhine, he's actually a grandmaster. He was still alive in 1950, so he was awarded the grandmaster title. But yeah, this is obviously his blind spot, and he fell for it again. So after knight captures on d5, he just played bishop to d6. He says, all right, maybe he doesn't even admit it. Maybe he just played it really quickly, saying, I'm down a pawn, but I'm still going to attack. Alekhine traded bishops. We have knight captures on d6, and now he just brings the knight back to f4, much like Max Euwe did against him 2 years ago. And now Alekhine is just up a pawn. So let's see how the game continues. We have knight to f6, queen to b3. This comes with check, king to h8, and now rook f to d1. Excellent development by Alekhine. We have queen to e7 and knight to e5. Also a beautiful square for the knight, putting pressure on that f7 square. Also, knight to g6 check is lurking. If you're not careful, Alekhine will sacrifice one knight and then try, win your queen with the other knight. So bishop to e6 by Akiba, hoping to trade some pieces, going to an endgame, and Alekhine goes bishop to c4. And now look at this trick. Bishop captures on c4, and Alekhine goes rook captures on c4, saying again, if you capture with my knight, my rook with your knight, I'll just go knight e to g6 check and win your queen. So, of course, Akiba cannot do that. So after rook captures on c4, queen to c7 was played, and now Alekhine goes back with the rook. Rook to c2, we have rook to e7, and now rook d to c1. Probably with ideas of d5, not right away as the knight would hang, maybe knight back to f3, and then pawn to d5, and then you break through on the c file. But after rook a to e8, Alekhine interestingly does not go knight to f3, he goes pawn to h3. creating a little bit of breathing room for his king and also stopping any knight to g4 ideas in the future. But it allows pawn to g5. By playing h3, Alekhine also presents a target for Akiba to attack. So g5, knight to d5 as, okay, the c pawn is pinned. We have knight captures on d5, queen captures on d5, offering a queen trade, and queen back to d8. If you go for this, I mean, this is just dead loss for black. The rook on the 7th, I mean, the mighty pig reigns supreme here. There's not much black can do. So Akiba is forced to go back, queen to d8, but still it's not easy for Alekhine to make a move here. Now his queen is hanging. He's still up a pawn, and he has the safer king, so there's not a doubt about it that Alekhine is better here. But he should just go queen back to f3, b3, or maybe queen f3, and continue the game. But Alekhine does not feel like it. He just plays knight captures on c6. He says, I'm up a pawn, I will give you the knight for 2 extra pawns, and then I will be up 3 pawns. So it's like I'm not down material at all. We have b captures and rook captures on c6. And here, again, very, very playable position. Rubinstein can play rook d7, and he holds very nicely. But he played knight to e4. He offered a queen trade, and it's very tricky. Does he trade queens, and then, you know, then he's down a piece in a position where still anything can happen? Or does he play queen captures on f5 and allow rook to f8? You go after the f2 pawn. What is there? What did Alekhine see that maybe Rubinstein did it? Or maybe Rubinstein did, but, you know, his position was already bad. Pretty sure I don't have to even ask you guys to pause the video, because the move, of course, is self-explanatory. Queen captures on f5. And yes, rook to f8 is coming, going for the f2 pawn, but it doesn't matter. Rook to c8. Alekhine is up material, and he's very, very happy to trade queens. Rook captures on f5. We have rook captures on d8 with check, king to g7, and now pawn to f3 with pawn to e4, pawn to d5, and so on. So the knight is attacked, knight f6, we have pawn to e4, rook to a5, a3, rook to b5, and pawn to b4. We have pawn to a5, and now just rook to c5, going after the rook and the g5 pawn. And unfortunately, Rubinstein has to trade rooks here. He goes rook 7 to b7, and now b captures on a5. We have rook captures on c5, d captures on c5, and now rook to c7, going after the c pawn. And okay, he's still up a piece, and Alekhine does have the double a pawn, so maybe we can hold this. We have pawn to a6, and now, well, the problem with rook captures on c5, if you just go for this, is that after a7 and rook to a5, there's a8 queen, and then the rook will beat the knight, as you're also up 3 pawns, so there's no question about this. So king to f7, Akiba, you know, improves the position of his king. Rook to b8 by Alekhine, now threatening rook to b7, which will force a rook trade. King to e6, avoiding this, and now the question is, how do you win this? The problem is, if you go rook to b7, the move that did wonders for you in the previous move, does nothing now, because the king is not on the 7th rank, and you can just play rook captures on c5. And if a7, rook a5, and there's no win. You're going to lose this pawn, and this pawn cannot queen. So this is, well, in terms of how good your position is, this is a recipe for disaster. So Alekhine plays a move that only he can find. Not only he, but you know, it's an endgame, but you know, still finding beautiful tactics. Definitely something we expect from Alekhine. He plays rook to b6 with check, king to e5, and now comes the move that Alekhine saw that didn't work maybe, but now it does. Feel free to pause the video and what is this move? Of course, the move is rook to b7, and you're probably wondering, but didn't we just say rook to b7 doesn't work? Well, it didn't. It did work when the king was on the 7th rank. It didn't work when the king was on the 6th rank, but then again, it again works when the king is on the 5th rank. And why this is so? Well, if rook captures on c5 now, then look at this: a7 threatening a8 queen, and now after rook to a5, there's the nasty rook b5 check, and now you have to capture the rook, and the queen comes into the game, and the white wins easily. So after rook b7, rook to c6 was played, a7, rook to a6, and now the key move, pawn to c6. I say key move as there are many key moves here, but Alekhine just makes it work, and it doesn't help. Even if you bring the queen, pawn to c7, king to d7, yes, you're stopping it, but rook b8, and you cannot stop both pawns from queening. So after c6, knight to e8 was played. Probably Akiba wants to give back the knight if c7 is played, but Alekhine doesn't even allow that. He plays rook e7 with check, king to f4, rook captures on e8, and now rook captures on a7. And here, okay, it could still be maybe a little bit tricky if Alekhine is not careful. Maybe if he allows the king to g3, then maybe, you know, some checkmating threats could allow for some sort of a long perpetual or something. Not really, but it is possible, you know, to mess it up. But Alekhine just played king f2, stops everything, and he was in this position on move 46 that the great Akiba Rubinstein resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Why does he resign? Well, of course, after rook captures on a3, g3 is checkmate. So Alekhine did it all in this game, and well, it's like he knew. It's like he knew that here in this position, after f5 was played, that he would do it. Or rather, that he would blunder it. Here, you could just play some move like knight d to f6, and it's perfectly fine. But if it worked for Max Euwe, Alekhine thought, okay, I'm not going to win a pawn here, and then maybe struggle to keep it. I'm just going to hope Akiba blunders it. He already blundered it once. He might do it again, and he did. You know, some say that this was due to the trend between the games of Rubinstein and Alekhine, as you know, when they started playing some 20 years ago. Here I prepared a special table for you guys to enjoy. These are all the games that Alekhine and Rubinstein have ever played. First in 1910 they played a doubles consultation game, then they played an exhibition game. So first maybe actual game they ever played, not a tournament game, an exhibition game that Rubinstein won with black. Then Rubinstein won in 1911 in Carlsbad. Then we have the Vilnius All-Russian Masters in 1912. Also Rubinstein won, and then Alekhine defeated him for the first time in the St. Petersburg tournament of 1914. We've covered this entire tournament during the Capablanca saga, so you might even remember that it was Alekhine third, Capablanca second, and, well, none other than Dr. Emanuel Lasker, the world champion at the time, won first place. But yeah, this is that was a very nice event, and also I believe the first clash, no, it was the third clash between Alekhine and Capablanca. They also played 2 games before meeting in an actual tournament, and then Alekhine just got the better of Rubinstein. He also defeated him in 1921 in Hague, then in 1922 in London, then in 1922 in Hastings, then a draw in Hastings. Also, it was probably a double round robin, and then in Vienna, Rubinstein defeats Alekhine in 1922, and then, okay, Alekhine beats him in Rubinstein, then a draw in Baden-Baden in 1925, and then the last 3 games in Semmering, Dresden, and San Remo, all were won by Alekhine. And, you know, the games Alekhine won were pretty much all miniatures. 29 moves, 33 moves, 32 moves. Okay, also a nice win, Rubinstein versus Alekhine, that in Vienna 1922, only 26 moves. But, yeah, it was, you know, the trend was going from Rubinstein's favor to Alekhine's favor. And Alekhine also mentions the previous game they played going into this tournament, and I also have a quote from that event by Alekhine, because Rubinstein was completely winning, and then he had a weird moment like this one here, where he allowed this well, knight captures on d5, which is just you know, temporary blindness. I don't know how to call it. And Alekhine said that most chess players in a poor position make the mistake of well, going all out at all cost and without any regard for the positional requirements of the situation. The usual result is they lose still more quickly. Accordingly, the psychologically correct procedure for a player in a bad position is as follows. He must strengthen strong points and lines to which he is positionally entitled to lay claim, so that his opponent finds real obstacles in his path which cannot be easily overcome. So, you know, just because you blundered a pawn, maybe even a piece, maybe it doesn't matter what, you know, don't just rush it and go for the opponent's king and that's it. It only means that your opponent will win sooner than he actually would. You know, regardless of the position, you always have to play objective chess. strengthen where you're strong, strengthen where you're weak, and maybe, try to get by where you're strong, and maybe in the long run your opponent also returns the favor. And that's what Alekhine did against Rubinstein. He was able to win, and after that game, I guess Rubinstein just had a tough time facing Alekhine. Plus, okay, the age difference is obviously there. Rubinstein 50, Alekhine 38. Even though 50 in those days was not, I mean, it wasn't a lot. I mean, Anderson was 50 when he faced Morphy, and he was considered the strongest player in the world. So it's not like 50 today, but even today, I mean, Anand is over 50, and could who can beat Anand on demand? No one. So also something that I thought you guys might enjoy. And for those of you who are just joining us, the final standings of the tournament: Alekhine 14 out of 15, again absolutely spectacular. And then Aron Nimzovic, also one of the best tournaments he ever played, 10.5 out of 15. And Akiba Rubinstein, the 50-year-old Akiba Rubinstein, 10 out of 15, ahead of some incredible names here. So yeah, even though like I said, he was 50, he didn't care. He just won third place in this tournament. And like I said, if you disregard that Alekhine here has 14 out of 15, Akiba almost won the tournament. So he was very, very strong, and he played incredible chess against everyone. But against Alekhine, it was just I'm sure there's a term in psychology for that. I don't know what it is, but if any of you do know, you're welcome to share it. He just couldn't play against Alekhine. And like I said, this was the last game they ever played. Later on, Alekhine was mostly focused on playing World Chess Championship matches and organizing them, and avoiding some of them. And Akiba's health, deteriorated a lot, and he didn't really play professional chess after that. A lot. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The long-awaited clash between Alekhine and Rubinstein. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, don't judge Rubinstein by his play in this game. As I've said before, judge Rubinstein by the games he played well, as I say about every player. So if you haven't heard of him, or if you maybe haven't seen his Immortal game, first link in the description below. I will put both of the links. I made a video on it like 7 years ago, and then I also made a remake of the video. So whichever one you prefer, or you can also check out both. It's up to you. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Brian Baker, Michael Santos, Ryan Canus, Isaac Pinol Katadao, and Everett Mulder for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.